but then the Enlightenment. And it was to that period that I was drawn the most. The history of the infidel, to me, was a story of liberation. Liberation from the church, from the king, women's liberation, the workers' liberation, the liberation of the Jews, the struggle for the slave trade, but most fundamentally, a liberation of the mind. All these freedoms, all these struggles led to a morality that was diametrically opposed to the one I grew up in. Instead of submission to the will of one God and the obligations to convert others to submit, you learned to be free as an individual. You learned to respect the freedoms of others and to obey the law of an elected government that was itself subject to the law. A government devised not by God but by the infidel himself. That state of mental freedom was sometimes a relief and often harder than the state of being a slave. For instance, my sister, who longed for freedom more than anyone I know when we were growing up, was appalled when she actually found freedom. However, repeatedly lamented, "Is this all? Is it this?" The wall of prison fell away, mental prison, fell away for both of us in Holland. For her, the disappointment was greater than the achievement. She repeated over and over again, the state of freedom is the state of loneliness. A void within that one must fill, constant longing. When one passion was satisfied, another came in its place. When one thought was silenced, another came in its place. Instead of an external conscience, the state of mental freedom puts the conscience in your own mind. The old days of do's and don'ts provided escape and the idealization of liberty, which was a day of no obligations, no commands, no ordeal of any kind. Then when that day came for us, there came with it the obligation of filling it as you wish, and it turned out to be a great disappointment for her. Many who interviewed me suggested that I might be angry on Islam because of my sister's death. On the contrary, as she said it herself countless times, it was the state of freedom that disappointed her. The state of submission was familiar. She knew what the do's and don'ts were, what to rebel against, the loopholes and bending of the rules and the repentance process and the rebelling and so on. It was when the walls of submission vanished, when no mother came nagging, no angels whispering, no muaddin calling to pray 5 times a day, no reminder of a month to fast, no promise of a life after death, that my sister freaked out. What is freedom then, she said? A cycle of sleeping and waking, meals, daily showers, doing dishes, a job full of the same tedious people, the same tedious friends, husband, kids, and the same tedious life as Ma? What's the difference with Ma's life? My lame answer was that the only difference was now we could choose what we ate and drank, where we slept and with whom, where we lived and what we studied, if and how many kids we wanted to have. And that, I found, was so precious that I was willing to risk the wrath of God, his prophet, and my parents. However, like many other very strong-willed young people with a powerful imagination, was disappointed, deeply disappointed, and went back this time to an idealized past, that of Nairobi and Ma and the clan. And soon after she declared that life was not worth living. It was only when my little sister lost it that I really understood what was meant by losing one's mind. And it was also through this struggle of hers, besides all I've experienced, seen, and had, that the state of being free is one of modesty. And if that makes me an Enlightenment fundamentalist, Timothy, then so be it. I happen to think that this is an oxymoron, but it does not make grammatical sense. And I think that you're confusing the word fundamentalist with the superlative, or with a staunch believer. You should at least recognize the great thing about the Enlightenment was its emphasis on simple language, accessible. I recognize all the different writers of the Enlightenment and their disagreements, but they were accessible. You could disagree with them. You could retreat from dogma and the obfuscation of religious doctrine. And if that makes me simplistic, then I'm proud to be so. But I think what you probably mean is that I'm clear and unflinching in my recognition of the importance of liberty and will not be prepared to bargain with it. And having been exposed to more than my parental upbringing, having discovered the world of the infidel personally, I have come to the conclusion, yes, that the infidel's world is not perfect and it's full of many flaws. but far superior to the world offered by Islam. And Islam, as a doctrine, reduces the individual to a state of slavery, the woman to a state far less than that of a slave. Islam, as a doctrine, encourages fatalism. The believer lives by the philosophy of Allah wills it, then it shall be, inshallah. And if he doesn't, then it shall not be.